Meanwhile, in an effort to control the virus before it enters the country, federal health officials say they will screen travelers from Ebola-affected countries. The feds will take people's temperatures at JFK International Airport in New York starting this weekend. Next week, they will add screenings at Washington Dulles, Newark, Chicago O'Hare, and Atlanta International airports. Austin does not have direct flights to and from any of those countries, but as Sophia Beausoleil found, many people who fly the skies are still concerned.
I travel probably 4 times a year, and sometimes I go overseas. Normally it's for vacation.
Mary Kathleen Duncan is visiting Austin from North Carolina, but is on her way back home. Next month, she's headed to London.
To be screened is fine with me. I think that that's good to put measures in place because you don't know where people are coming from or where they're going to or anything really about their story.
This is video from Western African countries where Ebola is a major problem. You can see agents performing an exit exam and checking people's temperatures before they go on a plane. And with the recent case of Ebola in the United States, the feds plan to screen people entering the country from those nations starting this weekend.
I think it's fantastic. I think, if you're going to travel, around the country, then you ought to take the necessary precautions to be able to make sure that you're taken care of and all's well.
We have to put the Ebola epidemic in perspective, that this is not a big risk for citizens of this state or this country.
Jacqueline Dudley is a professor of molecular biosciences at the University of Texas. She says it's important to be cautious, but that travelers have more chances of catching a cold on a plane.
We're talking about viruses like Ebola, and that's generally some sort of direct contact with large amount of secretions or blood from the infected individual. So that type of thing would be extraordinarily rare on an airplane.
But they're still taking many precautions.
I would want to be protecting others from myself if I was infected.
Now, federal officials tell us that Western African countries have been testing about 36,000 people who go through the airports. About 77 people have been stopped because they showed symptoms of Ebola, but nobody has been diagnosed with the illness. Reporting from ABIA, Sophia Beausoleil, KXAN News.
The news about another patient and new security measures in some ways overshadowed the death of Thomas Eric Duncan in Dallas.
I didn't see my son. So I tell everybody thank you.
That is Eric Duncan's mother, who drove 15 hours from North Carolina to be at her son's bedside, but she never got to do that. Duncan had not seen his mother in years since he lived in Liberia and she lived in the U.S.
What happens next is incredibly important because the virus that killed Duncan can live in his body as long as it stays at room temperature. In West Africa, many deaths were linked to the handling of bodies, so the CDC has some specific guidelines. The body should be placed inside a plastic shroud and then inside 2 leak-proof plastic bags. Workers at the hospital and mortuary should wear protective gear. After that, his body will be cremated or buried inside a hermetically sealed casket quickly. That's when the remains will be safe enough for a funeral.